Hello, everyone. I'm Randy Dewey from Lift Leadership, and you can find us at randydewey.com. And today I have the great pleasure of having Steve Dailey on the show today. And we're going to go through a number of different things on how to raise capital, how to be ready to face a market that's quite challenging and an environment that's very challenging. And so it's a pleasure, Steve, to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. Excited to be here, and I love what you're doing, and eager to chat it up a bit here.
One of the things I didn't know about you when we first met is that you're an avid swimmer. I can see
Yeah,
Colorado State. It's quite the passion. You're a circle guy, I see.
that's right. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I love about swimming is it's a lifelong sport. It's a lifetime
Yes.
sport, right? And so, yeah, I still get in the pool frequently. Fell in love with ocean swimming when I was in Hawaii, and yeah, it's just been kind of woven into the fabric of who, what I do and who I am. Yeah, it's awesome.
The obviously at Colorado State, I should say that you've kind of found your way from swimming in the pool to diving into business and getting
Yeah.
sort of passionate about entrepreneurs and about entrepreneurialism. So how did you kind of get involved? You've been at it for 38 years, so you certainly have a ton of experience and helped a lot of companies over the years get their sea legs and get up the ladder of business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the very short version is I started a business. Well, my first career out of school, I was a professional swimming coach, but then found that I wasn't going to make a lot of money doing that long term, and decided to start a business on opportunity, the classic entrepreneurial story, seeing a problem in the marketplace, coming up with a solution. He was fairly innovative at the time, apparently, and it grew very fast. I got to a $2 million business in less than 2 years, and I started getting a lot of attention from local business people about how I had made such a meteoric rise to exposure. And when the day somebody asking me for my advice wrote me a check, I decided I was going to be a business coach. And so that was bad again, 38 years ago, I guess. Gosh, is it that long? I started talking about myself as a business coach before it was a thing, before it was even
Yeah.
something that people talked about. And through the years now have migrated through a lot of different markets or segments, audiences that I've served, all the way from startups to multi-billion-dollar global businesses, and have landed on really a passion around the entrepreneur that is in an important and pivotal part in their lives, what I call the second half, where
Mhm.
it really needs to count what they're doing right now. They've invested their heart and soul into their business, and it's finally at that place. It really needs to turn into something for their dream to come true, as well as their future financial security. And I think that's an intersection where you and I probably meet, in terms of that person that's really aware that, gosh, I've got to get this thing over the top, and I need something. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is. Could be funding, could be coaching, could be both. But I've got to take this thing to the next level. So that's where I focus today.
Over 38 years, you've seen a lot of business cycles, a lot of economic cycles, no doubt. And we're in the
Yeah.
midst of one very interesting one, of course, just coming a couple of years, on the heels of the pandemic. And,
Yep.
government money is starting to fall away, if not completely gone. Balance sheets have been weakened over the last couple of years. And yet here we are now, markets haven't completely returned. So, as much as we were excited about getting through the pandemics, now the sort of the repercussions of the pandemic and what it's done to certain sectors, which are, a bit more cautious, maybe not, business not quite returning, and how we're, hearing the rumblings of a U.S. recession that we're facing in the next couple of years. So
Right. Right.
it's a very, very awkward position. You got weakened balance sheets, markets not returning, potentially a recession in the next couple of years. So if there's time to rebalance your balance sheet and get
Yeah.
your yourself and your foundation solid to be able to weather the next couple of years, it's a very relevant topic for today, and I'm sure you're probably seeing that with some of your clients.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned the rumblings of recession. Gosh, I think I've had 4 or 5 conversations this week about that very thing.
Mhm.
You hear that kind of stuff. The messaging comes through the media. Of course, it's amplified. The
Yeah.
urgency and, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Sky's falling kind of stuff. commentary, and my my classic uh, I guess commentary on marketplace disruption is to basically, let's look at the facts.
Hmm.
In every marketplace, in every disruption, in every turmoil, and whether the economy is going strong or not, people are still spending money, people are still
Yeah.
buying, people are still seeking services and things to make their lives and their business lives and businesses better. And the question is, how are you positioned to
Yeah.
be the place that they're going to spend money, the place that they're going to invest their time and or resources to get what you're offering? And who in the disrupted marketplace, who people spend money with, is who they trust.
Yeah.
So my first challenge to anyone I have this conversation with is, what are you doing now to create trustworthiness in your market and make it known?
Hmm.
And it starts with, well, there's a whole, and we can go down the trail if you want, Randy, but basically there's an array of things that you can do, starting with being clear about your own differentiation and your own unique approach to what it is that you're delivering in the marketplace, followed by doing an extraordinary job of delivering that.
Yes.
And those things in combination create trust, which magnetizes you during disruptive times.
Hmm. It's funny that you mentioned that. The acronym LIFT that we came up with for LIFT leadership is about leading with passion,
Right.
inspiring your people, and then focusing on what makes lasting change, and then transforming obstacles into opportunities. And you hit the nail on the head. In the midst of a troublesome time is where the opportunities are. Those are obstacles, no doubt. But how do you take those obstacles and actually transform them into opportunities? Well, people may be, prone to trying to figure out how to survive. It's not about how to survive, it's how to thrive in this
That's right.
moment, and find the path of least resistance, get your business moving in the right direction, and take yourself to the next level. So it is important, in the Facebook group that we've been running and you've been a part of. It's the topics that we've been covering, and one of the statistics that I'll sort of reshare today, which I just still stunned by, is it was a study done by Pepperdine University. Craig Everett, he's the private markets director there, and he came out with the statistics that 89% of business owners report having enthusiasm to execute growth strategies, yet only 46% have the necessary resources to actually execute their growth strategy, which is quite stunning when you think about it. Basically most companies are undercapitalized, and yet they're always expected to grow. But if you can't even operate with the capital you have now, your business properly, and you're starting to make decisions and choices in your everyday life and business to try and manage your capital and your lack thereof, how are you ever going to grow? And then if you're sitting there just sort of with the wheels sort of starved all the time, it's pretty tough. And that's regular. That's all companies, is that he did across all sectors. So if you're on the entrepreneurial side, you probably have this magnetized, no doubt.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the worst time. Well, the Chinese proverb is something along the lines of, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, and the next best time is today.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I see that plague creates, actually, this, let's call it, creates what appears to be an insurmountable obstacle for entrepreneurs, is waiting too long, waiting too late, not looking far enough ahead in how you're going to actually achieve the goals that you have. I use an analogy, Randy. Can't remember if we've talked about this. I call it Grand Canyon thinking. If you ever been to the Grand Canyon, you probably were visiting the South Rim, and you could look across to the North Rim. And an entrepreneurial thinker will always say, "Wow, I wonder what's over there. I'd like to go see it."
Yeah.
But what they don't do is ask the questions, the important questions. How am I going to get there? When am I going to go? Am I going to fly a helicopter? Am I going to hike down and hike back out? Am I going to take a mule with me? What am I going to do when I hit the water? How long is it going to take? How much water do I need? How much food do I, those kinds of things. And the funding that we talk about that supports success and growth for an entrepreneurial business is embedded in the answers to those questions. How am I going to get there? What does the process look like? And often people come to me, quite often, and I've got a couple of stories here if you want them, about how this shows up. But a lot of people come to me when they're in a desperate mode,
Yeah.
when they have feel like that they've tried everything. They have big dreams still. That's the heart of an entrepreneur, but they didn't take enough time to think through that journey to the other rim of the canyon.
Hmm.
And therefore the plans are weak and shaky, and they've been running by the seat of their pants basically. And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I don't have enough money, and I don't know where it's going to come from, and I got to hurry up and make another sale, right?
That's interesting, because the other half of that study that was done at Pepperdine was talking about how many companies are successful when they actually go out to raise money. And it was
Right.
staggering. It was only 39% were successful. They didn't define what success was, but a lot of the banking community that I know, they're typically not giving the company as much as they ask for. It's usually going to be more expensive, and it's going to have much more restrictions and covenants. So it's
Right.
success in the sense of getting funding, but it's not necessarily success in the sense of what the company needs. So if that's the average, and then we take what you've just said, and that entrepreneurs, as they're growing their business, there's the entrepreneurs I've dealt with, they oftentimes will run into one of two problems I've seen. One, their business, they're waiting, they're developing their business, and all of a sudden the business takes off, but yet they didn't have that financial strategy figured out. And all of a
Right.
sudden they sort of just like a skyrocket, they just kind of run out of fuel in the middle of the climb, and they're unable to support it. And then
Right.
the business goes away because they just run out of the financial. They didn't have the financial strategy to back it. And then the other one is that it takes twice as long, it costs twice as much, and then all of a sudden the market just doesn't come as quickly as they had anticipated, and then they run out of fuel and sort of peter out in that path. But yet doesn't negate the value that the companies have, the one that takes off or the one that needs longer. But both of them don't have the type of financial depth that is required to help them actually capitalize on the opportunities that they have and that they are creating. So I'm sure in your experience, you've probably have a few war stories or trenches stories of companies that ran into one of those two veins. You got something that you could share with us?
Yeah, interesting, and that study's brilliantly revealing. I really like that you pull that out. One of the first places that many entrepreneurs tend to go to for funding are friends and family,
Mhm.
people that believe in them, maybe don't really understand the business, but are go Randy go kind of mindset. And the good news about that is that it's easier conversation to have perhaps than with a banker, because you don't have to be as prepared. They already
Mhm.
like you. It's a personal or emotional decision. It's not a practical one. But the downside is that also comes with, as we're discussing here, a lack of proper preparation and planning for exactly how much money do you really need? How's it going to get paid back? The typical tough questions that an investor or banker is going to ask. But one of the stories that comes to mind is a guy. They came to me, and he had again, like many, had felt like he had tried everything to get his big idea out in the marketplace. And through the conversations, as I was trying to find out, the journey to this particular point, so we could map a plan forward, he kept mentioning people that he had given percentages or portions of his ownership, his equity ownership, to in exchange for loans or money.
Mhm.
And the list was getting pretty long. I think he had about I don't know, 8 or 10 guys. And I said, well, wait a second. Let's write down. I want to get a good idea here. Who's invested, how much, and what's the percentage that you've given them of your company. Well, we added it all up, and he had actually given away 125% of his company.
Oh my goodness.
It was out of the desperation, right? I said, well, listen, Kevin, we're going to have to got to do some rewind here on some of these relationships. We'll probably be disappointing some people, but you don't own your company anymore.
Yeah.
And in fact, you're in debt to the very people that you thought were going to help you. But more on a positive end of the scale, I'm working right now with a guy that has a brilliant idea. He's an architect, and he's got a brilliant idea for a community, and he doesn't have the money to actually develop it all by himself. And so we're putting together the pro forma and the outlook and basically coloring in all the different pieces and in preparation to ask investors and or bankers for support to get it out there. And what he's done that's brilliant is three things. He recognized right away that if he didn't have skin in the game, he would be less attractive. And so he's really thought long and hard about things that he can do in his own life to basically put money on the table for starters. Second thing he did is he started to create buzz among his community of family and friends, but have structured it in such a way that he's attracting early adopters that he has a relationship with, but in the context of the pro forma. In other words, not just do me a favor, but here's the opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And then the third thing is that he's done a great job researching just what does it look like when an investor says yes. What is it that you put in front of them? What is the flow of the information? What's the promise and the outcome? What's in it for them? All that kind of stuff. He's done some great research. He didn't go to school for business, but he's gone to school on how to present. And so I think, when people like you come along that have formulas for how that looks, how that sounds, what makes sense, then it creates a fast path, frankly, to access.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in direct opposition to the first story I told you, where it's just sort of happenstance, do me a favor. I know you love me, so, help me out here kind of thing.
Over the last many years, I've raised lots of money in the markets, debt and equity markets. And, so I had, a really large network of bankers that I knew. And so in advance of the Facebook group that we were running, I went and polled all of those bankers that I knew and asked them what were the things that were really the most challenging when a company came in and asked to raise capital. And I was able, through all of that feedback, and it was lots, put it into three different buckets, which I found was, really, really, really telling. The first one was that they said that that the companies that come in to ask for money are completely unprepared with their documentation.
Right.
And, and to your point that you've just made, like when you come in and looking disorganized, they feel the banker draws a direct correlation that must be how you're running your company. If you're this disorganized, asking me to give you millions of dollars, then you must be disorganized in how you run the business. So for me, that becomes a flag as a banker. And then all of a sudden now you just raise the risk profile of something that probably doesn't necessarily justify it. But when they don't know the party on the other side of the table, like they maybe would like to, they draw conclusions. And the one conclusion is disorganization equals risk equals how you run your business, which means that you're a much higher profile. I found that to be, quite not surprising, but it was just the degree that they went on about that one point, which is why I made it number one, is because of just how much they take that. The second point that they made on the heels of that was that what the party on the other side of the table doesn't, the entrepreneur doesn't realize, is that I have to take his story and then turn around to the guy on the other side of the curtain. And that guy's title is usually compliance officer and underwriter. And there's a reason why those guys never get introduced to the client or the entrepreneur, because they want to keep a personal disconnection between that guy behind the curtain and the person asking for the money. But what's important to understand about that dynamic is that the banker is, genuinely looking for business. Like he has a motivation to lend the money on the other side of the table, but he has to turn around and sell the guy on the other side of the curtain with what you equip him to actually do. So now, right there's, okay, they're looking, okay, you're disorganized, you don't have everything in place. Does that mean you're a risk? Because I can't have my portfolio have a bunch of write-offs. So I've got to make a determination. So immediately when they're disorganized, it sends this message that, okay, how am I going to sell that to my compliance guy or my underwriter? And then if they're that much of a risk, then I can't have my portfolio underperform. So immediately it sets the dynamic odd, but off on the wrong foot. But then the entrepreneur has to really look at the banker as, that person that they're almost trying to create the salesman for them that is going to go sell the story to the other side of that curtain, right? And they don't, and not many entrepreneurs really realize that dynamic. So as much as the banker wants to lend you money and he's motivated to, he also has a pretty high bar on someone that's on the other side of that curtain that really is, his job is to not lend the money. So you got a natural tension the bank kind of creates between those two parties. So if you end up with that banker being weak and not necessarily motivated to lend you money, and he then goes behind the curtain, he's going to get a no, and he knows it. So it creates a very, very awkward dynamic. The third and last thing is, and I'll turn it back over to you, but the companies that lack profitability, and oftentimes entrepreneurs are still in that growth state, right? They're not necessarily showing like any capital that they are creating or any cash that they're generating is going right back in the business, right? Yep. So there's not a clear sort of cash layout that they can give, because they're typically consuming their cash. So the picture, like the financial picture, is not always as clear. But what's the problem that most bankers face is that there's always the hockey stick forecast, right? It's always like, oh, once we get this one thing, and that's what I need the money for, it's going to go to the moon. Well, the bankers like the story, but they're really looking to, how are you going to handle this money I'm going to give you? Are you just going to blow it out in the doors in the first couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden your machine that's already consuming its own cash is going to leave you strapped and unable to repay? Or, what happens if you actually take that off? Do you have enough capital to actually support that takeoff? And what happens oftentimes in the story that the entrepreneur is presenting, or the company is presenting, is that they just lack the thoroughness of the thought of how that capital is going to be repaid, and then how the sales, should they take off, will be funded, and then how that's going to translate. So there's the investment thesis and the capital and cash strategy is not thoroughly thought through. And then the banker has to try and do all that work to try and get that story filled in. And if he's doing the work, then he's already negative and suspicious, and he's not getting confidence enough to go behind that curtain. So that was quite telling, those 3 points.
That's brilliant, Randy. Yeah, and very worthwhile effort there to reveal the and it's fundamental. All right, it's not like we're not talking about some mystical barrier here. We're talking about things that are not only very logical, but also something that's in our control.
Yes.
As you're talking, I think it's important to maybe, as they say, talk about the elephant in the room. As an entrepreneur, you reflexively think like an entrepreneur. You're willing to take risk. You're innovative. If you blindfold a typical entrepreneur and drop them out in the middle of a foreign country, they can figure out how to make money, and which is awesome. It's why and I will say this unabashedly, I believe entrepreneurs are the backbone of our marketplace, of our economy globally.
Yes.
And so we got to have that thinking. We got to have that courage, that innovation, that risk taking. But that's not a banker. And that is not a compliance or underwriter person. Now, what bankers, my experience, and I'll be interested in your thoughts on this, Randy, but my experience is bankers are great intermediaries. They position themselves in a neutral zone, kind of like Switzerland. They're not gonna they're not going to create or introduce friction. They're going to be open, like you said earlier. There is a motive to lend money. That's the business of the bank, or one of the businesses. But you could look at the banker as a bridge, and they are what's the word? Multilinguistic. What's that word when you know more than one language?
Bilingual, or no?
Bilingual. There we go. Bilingual. That's what I'm looking for. And so they can relate and understand and have a conversation with an entrepreneur, and they can turn around and have a conversation with the compliance person, which are two ends of the spectrum, right? And so to carry what you were saying, we have to not only make it make sense for the banker so he can be an advocate for what we're trying to accomplish here, what we need, but also we need to help him with the language that the compliance or underwriter is going to want to hear. The
Yes.
banker will recognize that language because he's bilingual.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't tell him, he's not going to think of it. Or as you said, I think you pretty much said, or if it's too much trouble, he's going to have some resistance. And so what's the language of the compliance officer? Well, it's the things you're talking about. How are you going to pay it back? What's going to happen? Are you going to spend it all in one place? You're going to spend it, prudently and carefully. And by the way, just a quick sidebar here, and I know you know this, Randy. When you're seeking investment to get to a new level, new problems come with the new level.
Yes.
And if you don't talk about that, if you don't recognize that, then it becomes unbelievable really quick.
Mm-hmm.
The banker in their business mind is thinking about business process, and he's seen businesses hungry and young and eager, and he's seen businesses that couldn't pay him that were failing.
Yeah.
And he knows that there is a reason for that. And if you don't talk about how you're going to avoid those reasons that businesses fail, because when you get to a new threshold, you're now addressing new problems, then you start losing trust.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting point. One of the things that I think you probably have seen, or maybe I think oftentimes is misunderstood, is every bank doesn't lend every type of banking instrument. And there's a very complex world out there for both debt and equity. You've heard about angel investors. As you said, the bottom of the ring is friends and family, and then you're moving to angel investors, and venture capital, private equity, and then traditional lenders. And the world is quite wide in the range. And then the type of instruments can be commercial property loans. It could be factoring. There's about 10 different types of instruments out there. If you think about the 7 different levels of investment plus the 10 different types of instruments, it's a world of probably 40 or 50 different types of instruments that are out there. And one of the things that one of the bankers had told me that I thought was quite surprising, he says, it's not in my number of rejections, but oftentimes people come in looking for a type of instrument. I don't even offer it. And then they spend all kinds of time trying to sell me on something that I'll never get approved, no matter how great the story is. And one of the things that we have found, and that's why in the training course that we did, we pulled out that lender's grid and showed, if you want to go and get money, you've got to know where to go. And then you've got to know what to ask for. And when you get yourself into the right office, you can spend a ton of time, just consumed months and months knocking on all these doors, looking for support and capital when they don't offer those types of instruments, or you don't quite fit that, straight down the fairway kind of, avatar that lender has. Then you're trying to, it's kind of an apples and an oranges. You're asking for something they never could really do. And then they're trying to figure out a way to fit you into their model, and you don't, and you consume all kinds of time and waste all kinds of money and effort trying to get to something that you don't. So unpacking and understanding exactly where to go and what to ask for is super crucial.
Totally agree. You're right on there. And again, let's look at the characteristics and the mindset of an entrepreneur. This can sound complicated. This can sound overwhelming, frankly. How do you understand the combinations of all the different combinations of things, and who am I looking for? But there's 2 things that I would say to the entrepreneur that feels like they need to sort through all this. Number one is, and I've used this phrase all the time, none of us is smarter than all of us. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to figure it out all by yourself, well, you're failing before you start. You've got to involve people like you, Randy, and folks that understand the landscape of areas that you've perhaps never studied or aren't aware of, and really, avail yourself to the wisdom and the advice of others. Mm-hmm. Now, this is counterintuitive for most entrepreneurs. We tend to be, lead follower, get out of the way. I can do it. If it's to be, it's up to me, that kind of thing. And which is great. It's one of the things that gets us out into the marketplace, and in many, many cases, very successfully. but that independence resists asking for help and advice. But you must, if you're going to really understand a landscape here. But here's the other thing, entrepreneurs, take heart. The very thing that you have done to create a business that has any viability is exactly embedded in there, are exactly the same things and mindset that you need to have in talking to bankers. For example, you don't go out into the marketplace and try to sell your product or your service to every single person that can fog a mirror. You zero in on exactly who it is that's going to appreciate what it is that you're selling the most. And the classic strategy that I promote is, sing to the choir and then open the windows. In other words, focus on the people that really want to hear and already understand and already can relate. Then you can, save the world with everybody else that might be paying attention to that. So entrepreneurs, you've already got in your wheelhouse the idea of targeting an audience that's listening and will see a value, the relationship with you. And that's the same thing we do when we go find the right person for funding. So you have the skills on one hand, you've got this stinky thing called independence that gets in the way. So keep that in mind. But if you use your own skills plus good advice, then you got what you need.
Yeah, excellent. Steve, I know that we talked about doing a mastermind class and reaching out to the entrepreneurs in your network and creating the forum for these types of process to help guide these companies through to, from 0 to 100 days, be able to get them in a really strong position. And I think there's a tremendous amount of value, as you said earlier, not one person smarter than the whole of the group, and right. Having a trusted guide and advisor that really has been through those waters many times and knows how to jump the stones and get to the other side without falling in is really an important aspect of it. So I'm looking forward to doing this with you, and we'll put that out to our community and see if we can put together a good entrepreneurial mastermind that can help folks get from A to B on raising capital. So I'm excited about that to do that with you.
Me too. And I just to spotlight, I as a coach and having impacted hundreds or thousands of people by now with that entrepreneurial or business success aspirations. One of the things that I have learned is that every single person, no matter what their bucket or bag of challenges and obstacles are when they first come to me, in every single case, there is some brilliance embedded in what they've learned and what they know and what they've experienced, to the degree that they could be teachers themselves. And so here over the last couple of years, I've been on purpose inviting those kind of conversations. We're calling it here a mastermind, but think of the environment where you're not only a participant, but also a provider, a teacher, a advocate, a advisor, even among like-minded people. And now, they say the fastest way to learn something is to teach it to somebody else. and so really some magic happens when you get a bunch of smart people in the same place, not only there to learn, but also there to contribute. And like you, I'm eager to see what we can put together here to serve people in that way.
So we will leave a link at the bottom of the video for folks if they want to get a hold of us and get looking at that program. We do have a do-it-yourself version of that, and as well there's the mastermind, which is more of a done-for-you service. So we're going to get more roll up the sleeves and help you guide you right through that whole process. So Steve, how do people find you, and where's the best place to go find entrepreneurial excellence in your work?
Well, you asked two questions. Where do you find me? The best way to find me is out in the woods with a backpack. But but from a business perspective, please look at my website, entrepreneurexcellence.com, entrepreneurexcellence.com. Also of note, and I think this could be of great value for some folks, Randy, I committed this year to really declaring 2022 breakthrough for entrepreneurs. And so I'm offering twice a month a free session I'm calling Business Breakthrough Insights. So if you go to businessbreakthroughinsights.com, twice a month, we're just bringing up topics that serve entrepreneurs in the context of what it takes to create breakthrough. We actually are doing a session tonight. It's on relationships and connection. And oftentimes we don't look at how important how we do relationships is to the success in our business. It's not what we've been taught through social media, where connections and likes and all that business is the scorekeeping. It's about depth and impact, and we'll be talking about some strategies that connect directly to entrepreneurial success there. But anyway, businessbreakthroughinsights.com, free sessions twice a month. If people want to participate, want to know a little bit more about me and the business as a whole, it's entrepreneurexcellence.com.
Well, certainly we would get behind you on that one, Steve. You're certainly a great guy. I've got to know you. You've got a lot of value and experience in the 38 years and in that entrepreneurial world. So you're going to certainly, there's lots of breakthroughs I'm sure you'll come up with in your program. So super. I'll get the link from you for that and make sure that I include that as well in the.
Okay, wonderful.
So good stuff. Well, thanks everybody for listening in. Again, this is Randy Dewey at Leadership, and you can find us at randydewey.com as well. You can certainly direct message me through whatever social media you're seeing this on, and we'd love to serve you and find a way to help you through your journey. Thanks again. All the best. Bye now.